Hi, I'm Callie.
I'm Lauren.
And welcome to the TheBookCommonRoom podcast. Alright, welcome back, guys, to our spoiler-filled episode. I'm so excited to actually jump into the book, talk about what happened. There might be tears.
Oh my gosh. You guys. We were holding back.
Emotionally, I don't think I feel ready.
We were so holding back in our non-spoiler episode.
I know, and I hope it makes sense. I was just trying so hard how to explain the world and the characters without giving anything away.
I'm already getting emotional.
Oh no!
I just, this book
is
so... My eyes are stinging.
I just, you have tears in your eyes.
I know. Oh my gosh, this book is so good, you guys.
It's just so good.
Incredible. I don't know. I'm curious because I made my... and his siblings read this book.
I was so happy when you did.
And they liked it, but I think something that was hard for them was they wanted more and and they didn't understand some of the politics and the empire stuff because they're there's some empire things that I didn't understand, which fair, but
yeah, I know. Yeah, one thing I forgot to say in our non-spoiler episode that I was going to say. So this book, I did say that it's part of another series, like The World, but she was going to continue the story.
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff that she does set up for more to happen. So if your husband and his siblings felt that way, that is a fair assessment because it was supposed to happen.
And also, I think it's appropriate to mention it here because everybody's read it at this point, or at least if you haven't, you're expecting to have spoilers. So, but yeah, this was meant to be continued, but Emma Wang did something that I made my uncles read this and they were and he had lived in Japan too. And so he kind of understand more of the cultural references and the meaning behind the names, but he was just also confused and thought it was kind of lame that she didn't finish it. But then what Emma Wang has said about it, she was I couldn't do it in a satisfying way, and I wasn't gonna make readers get something that's lackluster. Yeah. And I was that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, haven't you read a first book in a series and was wow, that was so good, and then kept reading and it just kind of sucked? It fizzled. The author either rushed it.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know, this might be a controversial thing to say or not, but I think Twilight's Fall is that. The first book, in my opinion, for its time, is honestly not that bad.
Yeah, I've heard lots of people say the first book isn't that bad.
I honestly think the first book is a good book. For a younger audience, I think it's a good book to read. But then she just keeps going and she gets rushed, her world stops making sense, and the series just plummets.
Yeah.
And now has a bad rep.
I literally, this is a side tangent that we might cut out, but I was watching a deleted scene from Twilight the other day. It's they posted it, and it was this scene that was, what's that one girl with the red hair? That was
Victoria?
Victoria. It was the scene of Victoria, and she had kidnapped this couple in her car. And she was talking about her and this character named James. And it was incredibly cringe. I was oh my gosh, someone wrote this and someone had to perform this. If I was an actor, I'm sure that they were I just want to get a job. But that job, that was I would never want to say those lines.
The first movie is cringe and bad. I'm talking about the first, just the book.
Yeah, we're talking about the book.
Stephanie
but I was just thinking the adaptations, and it was New Moon. And
it was New Moon, yeah.
So it was adaptation and how it kind of fizzled. But luckily, we didn't have to endure that with this book series because she just gave a really solid standalone, even though this potentially was going to be a series, as a first book or just a book by itself, pretty dang good.
Yeah, she has a blog. And I was just reading through it the other day, and she said that she came up with this world when she was 12. And 12-year-old her started writing, and then now that she's older, there's just tons of plot holes. There's a bunch of stuff about the world that doesn't really make much sense if you really dive into it.
That's what Grayson had said.
Yeah, so she recognizes all of that, and she said she could either fix it and take years figuring out how to fix it, or just move on to other things. Yeah. She's decided to move on.
Yeah. And I think that just helps us, I adore this book. I love this book, but we do understand, some of the discrepancies in the story. But for me, at least as a reader, it did not distract from what I feel was the ultimate takeaway from the book.
I recognized it, but I was it
doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. So
I didn't care.
To each their own. Yeah. But let's dive into this book.
Okay, so how do we want to start it? Do we want to just dive straight in, or do we want to talk about,
I think we should just dive in.
Okay.
I think we just, like, whatever comes to your mind right now, and then we'll go. It might be a little, like, back and forth, but I think that's what the nature of this book club kind of could be today, because there's just, I don't want to go through a timeline so much as I want to focus on the characters, because this is such a character-driven book.
That's true. Do you want to start about what you did reread?
Okay.
And Mamoru, because it starts with Mamoru.
Yeah,
like, what's going on?
So the book, I'm just going to
hold it.
So good. So I didn't get super far in this reread, unfortunately.
You've already read it, though, so it's
but I have read it before and had taken notes the first time, because it was just, like, Callie had referenced this book to me, and she was like, you have to read this. And I was like, okay, fine. and I have a long list of other books Callie has told me to read, which I have on my shelf that I haven't read. But
it's okay.
I'm hoping, like, at the end of graduating, I'll finally get something to be read. But she had read this book, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to read it. And it took me a little bit to get through it, just because it wasn't so much the story was, like, lagging behind. It was the terminology. I don't know Japanese, and everyone's names sounded the same. Which is such a...
Takeru.
Like, that's just any person
Takashi.
being exposed to a different culture will say. Like, they all look the same. They all sound the same. Yeah, I mean, have you seen European artwork? Like, everybody looks the same. Like, it's kind of like one of those where, like, I was reading it, I was being introduced to something unfamiliar, and it just seemed all the same to me.
Yeah.
And then with time, I was able to make distinctions. And then this second time rereading, I understood so much better. Like, clearly, because I had, like, understood the story before. But it starts off with Mamoru. And it is
innocent little boy.
So good. And this, like, innocent boy, and she sets up the world so nicely. Like, it was.
Can we just read the beginning of it?
Yes, it was just so welcoming.
The atmosphere.
Okay. Do you want me to read?
Go for it.
So it goes. It was a harrowing climb to the high school. 821 steps. Mamoru had counted one time on his way up. No easy feat, while focusing on not toppling off the side of a mountain. For most 14-year-old fighters, I love how he said fighters.
Because that's what they are.
Yeah, the winding up to the school was a true test of nerve and agility. But Mamoru, with his springy legs and boundless energy, woke each morning looking forward to the challenge. And so that just, like, sets up Mamoru's character. And, like, also...
the atmosphere.
And the atmosphere. And this village is very warrior-centric. They're protectors. And then you get this perspective of an outsider coming into this world who's, like, gonna fall off the mountain because he's so tired of climbing all those stairs. He's very intellectual, but he's not very, like, well-versed in martial arts. And so Mamoru is just this incredible warrior from the beginning, because he comes from this great house with large expectations that you get from the sense of the beginning. Also, like, the head of the school is his uncle, who is the head of the Matsuda clan,
head of the whole village basically.
And which I love Takashi, like, I love him so much. So funny, and such a stark difference from Takeru, who is this younger brother, because they had that older brother younger brother kind of tension, dynamic, because he was the oldest and he was inheriting so much,
and they had that horrible abusive father,
and they had the grandfather is incredibly, like, abusive, embedded in, like, the most toxic parts of the traditions of this culture. Anyways, so you start off with Mamoru, and you're in, like, the first 50 pages, and you're getting so much of this relationship between Mamoru, who is, like, grown up in this village, never left, been surrounded by teachers who've never left the village, so they're being taught by people who only know
it's a false history.
It's a false history. They, like, you cannot teach history from only one perspective, which is all that they had, which they did purposefully.
Yeah, well, because the government wants them to be fighters, so they're teaching a fighter history.
Yes.
Like, I mean, honestly, think about to your own school history days.
And
we fought a war, and our nation was the strongest.
Yes.
And we didn't need anyone's help.
Yeah. Exactly. And if it's like, and if you're raised thinking that your village is indestructible, you're going to fight for your empire, knowing that, like, whatever foe comes your way, like, no big deal.
Like, I'm the best and everyone else is lesser than.
Yes. And so then you get introduced to this character, Kwang Chuli, who is, like, whose dad is coming in to install, like, info comm devices or something like that connected to satellites. And so even though these kids are, like, very archaic, they, like, fighting with katanas, everything is about being a warrior, versus Kwang, who's, like, very, like, well versed in the world because he's traveled a lot with his dad, because he's been installing these ways to communicate between villages.
I love their introduction where they're just talking like
So funny.
14-year-old boys would.
Yes.
And they're Kwang is just like, oh, what do you do for fun? Do you just like fight and train all day? Mamoru's like, yeah. What else would you do?
And he's like,
then
video
Kwang
games?
Is like, I play video games. And then Mamoru's like, oh, we don't have those here.
Yeah. Yeah, Mamoru is very and Mamoru is like such like a respectful boy. Like even though he's so frustrated with Kwang, he's like, I gotta be strong. Like I gotta be
a fighter.
I gotta be a fighter. I gotta be respectful. And like his uncle was like, if you, and the other thing too in this village is like, if you have a problem with someone, you duel them. Like
yeah, you fight.
You fight.
Old school.
Whereas Kwang's like, I'm gonna do that. You're gonna kick my butt. Because like Mamoru is clearly like very strong, very advanced compared to the rest of the boys, because of the training he gets. And so it's just this dynamic of like Mamoru coming into tension with Kwang, where Kwang brings all these foreign ideas, and he just thinks it's all like he doesn't even know what propaganda is. Kwang teaches him what propaganda is, and Kwang like is very like aware of how much that Mamoru begins to wrestle with the fact that, oh, like the Empire might be lying to us. Like he didn't even know like that other people fought in this war. I can't even remember who it was. Was it like, he was just saying like, they said that there was no casualties, and he's like, there's monuments of all the death of the people that
were women fighters.
The women fighters and like people that helped the Kaigenese that the Kaigenese don't recognize, like as if only the Kaigenese did anything and nobody died. But there were so many casualties, like thousands of people. And he's like, I've been to monuments. I talked to families who've had people die in this war. And Mamoru is so like at like war with himself, and to the point where they finally find artifact like evidence that they had planes.
I love that scene because Kwang is basically like, Mamoru, what you've been learning your whole life is wrong.
Yeah.
And he is a fighter, so what does he do? He punches him.
Yeah, he punches them.
And, of course, there's repercussions. So they're up on top, like, out of the clouds in the sky, not knowing anything on this roof.
Trying to clean it without their magic.
They fall, literally.
They fall off the frickin' roof because Kwang loses his footing, and then he's like hanging off by one hand. The crazy part is Mamoru's like, if he was just dead weight, I could pull us up. I was like,
he's like freaking out.
But he was like, because he's flailing around, he's like, dude, we're gonna fall on rocks. There isn't a river to save us. So
yeah, but I like how they literally, like, Mamoru literally fell. His powers failed him. And they find this artifact to prove that, his government has been lying to him this whole time. So it's like, literally and symbolically, he is falling.
And also, this big thing is like, they teach him that pure blood is the most powerful. Like, anyone that has mixed blood, mixed powers, they're less. And so they were also saying, like, their enemies will fight less. But then you get this, like, dual story of, like, you have Kwang, who's representing the voice that's bringing, to Mamoru's attention that everything could be a lie, whereas Misaki is doing the same thing with her friends. But Misaki is a lot more better at approaching it than Kwang. Because Misaki is like, you can't give them so much change at once, or else they're not going to really accept it. And there were a lot of things that Misaki held back because she knew it would just be problematic for her friends.
And she just couldn't talk about it.
And she couldn't talk about it. So Misaki is at the same time kind of in Kwang's position. Like, you're getting this like flip between Mamoru and Misaki, and Mamoru and Misaki that are kind of grappling with this. The Empire is lying to us. We might be in danger. And so that's kind of what we get opened to, is like there's something wrong, and Mamoru's figuring it out, but Misaki may have known like something like this would happen.
Well, Misaki already knows.
Yeah.
She knows that the history that Mamoru's learning at school is wrong.
Yeah.
She knows that. She knows that.
And that's the other thing too, is they're mixed. Misaki
no,
marrying in.
Pure.
I thought they were mixed though, because Mamoru.
They have the same magic.
Mamoru had like that mixed blood thing though.
So that's where the world is a little complicated. So they're both Jijaka. No, yeah.
That means water bending.
And that's what they both have.
Yeah, but it was like
they just utilize in different ways.
Oh,
so the Matsudas are ice, and then her family is like the ocean. It's both water. and that's all that's really important. So, like, if you had, like, water and fire, that'd be mixing.
Yeah.
But it's water and water.
Okay, because what was weird to me was, like, Mamoru did this thing eventually where he, like, used blood or some mix in his ice that made it actually stronger, opposed to it being purely ice and water.
Yeah, well, so that's where he was taught false.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, because they're supposed to only use water powers for ice, nothing else.
Because Misaki knows how to manipulate blood.
She knows how to manipulate all sorts of liquids.
Yeah.
But to them, that was impure. But her blood itself, like her ancestral magic, is pure.
Compared. Okay, I couldn't remember how that works. But still, like, there was some mixing of what ice and water could have been, whereas Mamoru did something that was incredibly innovative because he mixed, which I think is like a symbolic of the book, in the sense that it is important to have like a mixture of understanding, because it'll only make you stronger. It's like, okay, this is going to be like kind of philosophical, but you know that part in Avatar when Uncle Iroh is like, he learned the ways of each element, and in the end it made his like firebending stronger. I think that's kind of like this book is like, I don't know, like you as a person can be stronger because you're allowing yourself to learn ways of different things and mixing it all together. And so I was thinking about that. But anyway, so yeah, that's how the beginning opens. There's like clearly like Mamoru's like world is kind of falling apart, and then yeah, we'll go from there, because it's leading up to some of our favorite moments.
Yeah. So, and I think the very beginning is interesting, the transition from Mamoru to Misaki. I just had it. So Mamoru is just basically, Kwang basically says, he's like, it's like I've stepped through a portal back in time, coming to this world, and then it goes straight into Misaki, and she's thinking about her past. And how she has a bunch of sons, and she's very upset about it. She wants to have a daughter. Her character, I feel like at the very beginning especially, is all she thinks about is what she doesn't have. She doesn't have daughters. She doesn't have forward-thinking daughters like herself. She
had 4 boys, which is what...
She doesn't want to be married to Takeru.
But all the women are like, you have the best life. Like, the people around her are like, you should be grateful. Like, you had 4 boys, whereas Setsuko had a daughter. And she was like, And they have a loving marriage. Yeah. And her marriage is not loving. It's loveless, pretty much. And very ice and cold.
So I feel like Mamoru's journey is a lot of discovering the world and what's going on around him. So for me, when I first read it, I'm like, oh, this is the main character who's going to then save the world. He's going to bring everybody that's stuck in the past to the present, to now. That's his role. He's going to grow up. He's going to become a leader. He's going to do that, but he's going to do it in a respectful way.
He's going to be the change that they need.
He's going to be the change, but he's going to be kind, and he's going to be understanding. Like, he is Mamoru. He's the protector of truth. And
he's so different from his younger brothers. Yeah.
And he's just wise. He's a 14-year-old boy, but he's so wise, and he's so strong. And
I guess that's not fair, though, because younger brothers are like 5 and under, or 6 and under, or something like that. So they have very strong personalities, but like also Mamoru is like
he's just different. Well, he's also just different from the rest of the town,
and like
that's established. Like he is special. Yeah, and that's the setup for his character. Is he's going to be the protector. Misaki even says multiple times he's going to grow up to be a great man one day. Anyways. I feel like that's just kind of like the main setup. But if we get into the nitty gritty, I have a couple moments in the book that are my most favorite. But my first one is when Misaki and Mamoru are talking. So
that's one of my favorites
Mamoru has fallen off. He's as low as he can get. He's fallen off the roof, and now he's coming home. He's all bloodied up because
he knows what happened.
He freaked out. He just started like punching things and like.
Is this the sun? Is that the chapter we're on?
I'm on page 162. Mamoru comes to Misaki, his mom, and is just seeking for comfort. And is like, I have learned all of these things. He's very open. He's like, is the government lying to us? And her being stuck in the past, she recognizes later, probably didn't say the best thing to him. It's a pretty long conversation that happens. but the ending's my favorite.
Oh, I know, it's so good.
When Mamoru's just so worried. He's like, everything's wrong. I'm not the strong fighter I thought I was. He's at his lowest of lows. And he asks his mom, like, what's going to happen to me? Like, what kind of man am I going to be? And he asks, a smart one, he suggests. Misaki laughed. You're smart, Mamoru. You're starting to be. I'm sure you'll grow into a fine man. It goes on, and then she says, I know, this is Misaki, I know you might feel broken, but we're Jijakalu, we're water, and water can shift to fit any mold, no matter how broken and reshaped, we can always freeze ourselves strong again. It's not going to happen all at once, she added. You'll have to wait for the turn of the season to see what shape the ice will take, but it will form up clear and strong. It always does. So that's just Misaki's way of being like, you're constantly going to be broken down in life. You're constantly going to have something, an event, a person that's going to get thrown at you and you're going to be broken down. But because you're like water, you're going to move, you're going to go with the motions, and you're going to refreeze and you're going to be stronger than before.
Yeah.
Which is so important to him.
I know. But it's just so cute how it ends though too, because it's like, in the end, it kind of ends with like Misaki saying, for now, just let me be your mom.
Yeah, come here and let me hug you.
Yeah. But it's just so cute. Like, this moment is so tender, and they're just, like, watching the sun kind of burn away the mist. Kind of, like, because, like, he is kind of in this fog right now. Mm-hmm. And, like, he's just sitting with his mom, and for that day, it was what he needed. And so, so good.
Yeah, and then after that, he's like, okay. And he continues to see Kwang and learn about kind of what's really going on in the world, and recognizing propaganda that's on the TV that they have. He's recognizing what's wrong in the world and what might need to be done to help fix that. Which then honestly leads into my next favorite chapter. It's chapter 10.
I was going to say, yeah, go ahead.
Which is on page 194. So then to continue on, my other favorite moment of Mamoru's character developing comes from chapter 10. It's called The Reason. Page 194. This is another conversation that he has with Misaki. This is after he has fought with his dad. He stuck up for himself. He's like, the stuff on the TV, that's false. That's propaganda. And his dad, Takeru, is like, you can't say that about the Empire.
Yeah.
That's wrong of you to say. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go into the dojo, and I'm going to...
The fight.
This
was after the fight.
After the fight. You're going to stand up for what you've said. Mm-hmm. And Takeru beats him. Yeah. Like, he does punch him in the face, but sword fighting, he beats him. And he looks, and Takeru's mad.
And Misaki's watching all of this.
Mm-hmm. But for me, this was a moment for Takeru where I think he does recognize what Mamoru's saying is right, but he just doesn't have the capability to get process it. So all he knows how to do is fight it.
And even then, Takeru is like, wishes he didn't even have like that kind of anger. Mm-hmm. Which you find out later why.
Yeah. But it's horrible. Anyway, so then there's this moment where Misaki then steps up and is helping Mamoru learn how to fight. Which is not supposed to happen. Women are not supposed to fight. But Misaki has a fighting background.
She does.
And we'll go into that when we talk about Misaki. But I love how just this whole thing where Mamoru's like, you can fight? Yeah. I didn't know that. He's like, I don't want to hurt you. And she's like, come at me. And then he's like, I don't want to hurt you. She's like, well, then I'll go at you. So they have this whole fighting thing. But I think Misaki's just brilliant doing this.
I know.
Like, she basically is like, you just need to have confidence. You don't need to be the strongest person ever. You need to look at your strengths and use them with confidence. And that's how you're going to win.
But Mamoru also realized her fighting style is different.
Yeah.
He's like, where did you learn this? Because he was like, these aren't like Susano techniques or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so
that's her
Misaki
family.
Is like, no, they're not.
No. Yeah. And he's like, where did they come from? And she's like, I don't talk about that.
Yeah. She's like, we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about that. But I just love this whole part. And kind of towards the end, she looks at him like, you're amazing.
Yeah.
And there's just another cute moment between a mother and a son where the son is really seeing her. Mm-hmm. And she's never been seen like that before.
No.
So,
like, in a way where it's like, I don't know, there's just so much admiration coming from Mamoru for just, like, I don't know, who Misaki is. Oh, so good. So good.
So that's just Mamoru.
Yep.
So then Misaki, Do you want to talk about her character?
Sure.
Background?
You probably let me get into like Misaki's kind of background. I actually feel like this is a pretty foggy area for me, but I just remember that
this is part of the story where I feel like she was going to use what's been established to continue on more books.
Yeah, but it's basically showing that Misaki kind of was a renegade in a way. She was running with like a pack of kids, trying to do what they felt was right against the empire and the government and how they were like mistreating people. I don't even remember where this was exactly, but that it's like showing like how her relationship developed with Robin, and Robin is fire magic, and so she kind of fantasizes about Robin a lot.
Well, she's in love with him.
She's in love with him because he was like everything opposite to what she was and what her magic is, and to what Takeru is. She's constantly comparing Robin to Takeru because he's warm, he's kind, he's
everything
compassionate,
she's not.
He's emotional, and he lets himself be led by his emotions. Not saying that there aren't like checks, because Robin is painted in a way that he's pretty wise, but he like is this fire.
I would say he's actually very naive,
which is what Misaki talks about, because Misaki is more cynical, I think, compared to Robin.
She's very realistic.
Yes. Well, there's realistic and then there's cynical too, but like where I feel like you can kind of think negatively about people. But there also could be like gaps in what I remember of like her backstory. But I just know that her backstories are kind of showing like how she was able to fight the ways that she fights, and why she like thinks the way that she thinks within the world, and then why she's in love with Robin. And Robin was always this like possibility in her life, and she, I don't know, like she was being held by someone who made her feel warm instead of being with someone who's always cold. And she herself is cold. She roomed with Iranganese woman who is supposed to be the enemy to Kaigenese.
Yeah, so that's just another where Misaki is the character who knows the world.
And I love how when she talked about her, she was like, she wasn't that bad, but
I know, like they fought.
Yeah.
They even said like they argued, but they eventually became friends.
Yeah.
She was the one that eventually sent her a letter to warn that the Raganese army is coming.
Yeah.
Is this roommate. So you've got these two women on opposite sides who become friends, and then one of them helps the other woman out.
Yeah.
Which is so forward thinking for this book.
For her friend, it's treason for her country to have done what she warned the enemies, like, and was the only one to have done that. Like, oh, crazy.
But it's all because Misaki was open to go to this place.
Yeah, and had befriended her enemies.
Yeah. I think the other important thing about learning about Misaki's background is not just because she, like, fell in love with a boy and learned how to fight, but she learned what her purpose was.
And, yeah.
She learned that she is able to kill somebody for the people that she loves. She is able to put her own sense of self and her own pride aside to help who she loves. That is her purpose. And that's what Mamoru is really seeking this whole time, because we haven't talked about this. So the Whispering Blade.
Yes.
Each major family has their own special power that they can do. And the Matsudas have the Whispering Blade, which is a sword made out of ice that can cut through steel.
And Mamoru's like
scientifically isn't like possible.
But also like Mamoru is like 14. He's like, I can't do it. And they're like, the youngest person who's ever done it was like 17. So
it was his dad.
And it was dad. But you still have a few years. And so like Mamoru this whole time is trying to master Whispering Blade, and like his dad has tried to teach him, but without success, clearly.
Just saying you failed. That's his teaching. You didn't do it right.
And Misaki talks about that too. She's just like, she judges his teaching style, basically. But
because
he doesn't know how to teach. No. He doesn't know how to make things teachable.
He doesn't know how to work with human beings.
No. He doesn't really know how to connect with human beings.
Yeah. But that's kind of the whole point, is Mamoru has to figure out what his purpose is. Like, why is he going to fight? Why does he want to? Why is he going to protect? Why is he going to eventually kill some people? Because that's not...
Like, can he do it?
Like, can he do it? And that does become... his purpose is his family.
Yeah.
And his purpose also becomes his empire, his country. He's going to fight for it.
Yeah.
Even though it's been telling him lies.
Yep.
And it's been holding him back.
Yep.
He's still going to fight for it.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting.
I think it's interesting, too, because I think it's him realizing, like, well, what else can I do? Like, people I love are here.
Yeah.
Like, and I wouldn't be trying to protect them. So I think he's having to find it's him reshaping his reason for, like, fighting and being a warrior, which I think is so hard to do when you're, like, all your life you've been thinking one way, fighting one way for one reason, and then something like truth comes into your life and you're like, okay, I have to change the way I think.
Yeah.
Which is, like, so hard to do. And he's 14 and I guess he's a little bit more, like, shapeable, because then you think of, like, Takeru, who's, like, so set in his ways that even when truth is staring him in the face, he can't mold to it. I don't know.
Like at the very end, that scene where he recognizes that Misaki's a fighter.
Yeah.
They have been living with each other, married for 15 years.
Yes.
And she even says, like, a fighter is always able to tell when another fighter's presence just by the way they walk. And Takeru is an amazing fighter, so he should be able to just tell. But he couldn't. No. Because he's so close-minded.
And he's so distant.
Yeah.
Like, even if he's staring at you, he's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, which, like, may have to do with, like, his horrible upbringing, but that's, like, no excuse for after his dad had died to continue this horrible, like, tradition, and to be so emotionless as he was. Like, you could argue Takeru isn't really human.
Oh, no, that's another whole thing about this book, is these humans are basically seen as gods.
Yeah.
Like, if someone is able to form ice that can cut steel, that is a godlike thing. Yeah. Only a god could do that.
So that's, like, it feeds into this rhetoric that they are above everybody else.
Yeah.
Which Mamoru is not like. Like, he clearly shows a lot of love for his peers and his friends. And then clearly, like, with friends that think very differently to him, he reacted like any other kid would. But then he also was able to come to terms with it. And I think Misaki really helped guide that in a way. But also, Mamoru was such a great teacher for Misaki.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I think Mamoru is what ultimately helped her turn away from Robin when he freaking showed up.
I would say losing Mamoru is what did that.
Yeah.
I would argue that she raised Mamoru for 14 years and she never saw it. It took losing him for her to recognize it.
That's true. Oh,
which is
so good.
And she recognizes that. She does say she missed it. She missed 14 years of Mamoru's life.
Yeah.
It wasn't till he was gone that she was like, he was something special. And I wish I was there for that.
But I don't know. It's so good. Like, that's the other thing, too, is it's like, there's, like, this level of rawness. Like, there's so many parts where Misaki is like, I know that this is bad to feel this way and think this way, but I do. Yeah. And you disagree with her because you're like, oh my gosh, like you need to be here, because Takeru's never there, and you find out why. But Misaki, even though she's feeling everything, she's so stuck in the past. And like, and we kind of talked about this in our last episode, but there's just this constant mourning for who she could have been and where she could have, like, I don't know. I think it was very problematic. But Mamoru is, like, the best character. And the tragedy, oh my gosh, like, just the part where he makes his last stand. Oh, it's like there's something about stories that are just so compelling to me when there's absolutely no hope, but people still fight. Yeah. There's just, like, such a, I don't know, like, admiration when there's just absolutely no hope. They know that they're gonna die, but they still fight, and Mamoru does that. Yeah. And in the most, like, when hindsight, Misaki figures out what he did. Like, is so, like, I didn't believe he was dead. I was like,
I didn't either.
No way Mamoru is dead. There's no way that they killed him. I thought he was, like, hurt, and she was just holding him. No. And, and the thing is, there was a lot left in the book after Mamoru's death.
That's the very middle of the book.
Like, there's a reason Emma Wang did that. There's a reason that the death happened in the middle of the book, and there was still so much to say. Yeah. And Takashi's death, too. Oh my gosh.
Everybody's death?
Everybody's death. Just
the teacher's death. What's his name?
Yukino? Yukino Dai.
All of the men, basically, except
Hiyori. Does Hiyori?
That's later.
We
should talk. I want to talk about that,
too.
Though. We've talked a lot about setup. I really hope we haven't rambled too much, but there's just so much in this. And Mamoru and Misaki's characters were so cleverly established, I think, for this exact moment for Mamoru's death. There's so much hope in Mamoru. He's supposed to be the one that's supposed to change the world.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be the one to make everything better, make Misaki better, make his dad better. He is the sole person to do that. He's been set up that way, right? Yeah. And so you get to the very end. He's fighting this, he's fighting Aragonese, fighter who he has been explained to be, he's stronger than the Matsudas.
Yeah.
He took down Takashi and Takeru's big dragon that could kill hundreds of people. This Raganese fighter took that down.
Yeah.
So if this Raganese fighter was able to get to the town, he would have killed everybody. So Mamoru, the protector...
And he wasn't even told to do this. His uncle told him, go up the mountain and protect the women and the children.
And then run back home. But he saw this fighter, and he knew that if he let... this Raganese fighter get to his mom, to his brothers, they were going to die, so he needs to stand up and fight. Even though he knows he's probably going to lose.
Because he for sure knew he probably was going to die.
I mean, he literally said, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
He said those words.
This is a 14-year-old.
He watched his teacher moments ago get stabbed and die. He just left his uncle to die.
Yep. He knows his uncle is just holding out. It's not about, he can take these people down. He's just giving people time.
Yeah, he's just giving people time. So all of this is led up. Mamoru knows, though, that his purpose is his family and protecting his family. I'm going to get emotional talking about this.
Oh my gosh.
That's his purpose. He is going to do that. So I'm legit crying.
I am too.
The first time I read this book, I legit had to stop for days.
I did too.
I did take a break.
I literally was it was I can't believe Callie told me to read this. You're gonna
suffer
that
with me.
meme where it's when you gave your friend recommended you book just so they're not alone because they're suffering. It's so true, and we did that all to you because this, and you'll thank us for it because it's so
good. But I love it. I'm just gonna read a little bit of it. He's fighting. He has been stabbed in the stomach.
Oh my gosh.
He literally looks down and his guts are falling out of him.
Yeah. He's
lost a couple of fingers. And it says, alone on the mountainside, a whispering blade caught the last... I'm on page 332. Alone on the mountainside, a whispering blade caught the last rays of a dying sun, which is very symbolic in Japanese culture. It gleamed once, pointing skyward as its first and only victim hit the snow. Then its work done, the sword fell to mist, the sun sank to the sea. I did it, he thought, and the blood spreading from his body seemed unimportant. Tosama, Kachan, I did it. He couldn't wait to tell them. It continues on, and he's contemplating kind of about his life and his death and how human he is, and then he looks over to the guy that killed him. It wasn't a frightening face, or even a particularly foreign one. Pale skin, black eyes, and sharp features, much like Mamoru's own, in a different uniform. The man could have been an upperclassman or a young teacher at Kumono Academy. People always said the Raganese were demons of a different breed from the Kaigenese, but their blood seemed to be the same color. Now that they lay still, letting it run together, they had all come out of the same ocean, hadn't they? At the beginning of the world? The dragon killer didn't look like he felt any pain. If anything, he looked faintly surprised, his eyes wide and his lips parted. Just a human. Here with Mamoru at the end of the living world, and his body grew warm and numb, Mamoru wondered if this Fanyaka had something to remember him across the sea. A father, a mother, someone who would be proud to hear he had died on the Sword of Kaigen. Mamoru, literally, his last thoughts are of the man that killed him.
The enemy.
But that's what's so beautiful about Mamoru, and what's so tragic about his death, and what makes me really angry. is we need more people like Mamoru.
We
need more people out there who can look at
people that they were raised to believe.
The supposed enemy, but see that they're human.
Yeah.
We all bleed the same blood.
They have a mom, they have a dad that cares for them, that's going to mourn for them.
Yeah.
That is proud of them. Mamoru is like reflecting on like what he hopes his parents would feel for him.
Like, who knows? Maybe this man, he honestly could have been an evil man. He could have saw this 14-year-old been like, yes, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to kill this, which is a bad thing to think.
Yeah.
But Mamoru doesn't know that. And he doesn't care. He just sees the human that's across him.
He's able to look at this objectively in death.
Yeah.
As a child. Like, it just makes you... it just makes you want to be able to... I feel like, especially in our world right now, where there's so much turmoil politically, especially right now, there's just, like, so much division. And it's not saying that we shouldn't recognize our differences, because I think it's very important to us, like, what makes us different and what makes us good and, like, work together. But, like, being able to look at people objectively and know that, I don't know, make them human is so important.
Well, even like recognizing the difference just before what I read, when he has recognized how to create the Whispering Blade.
Yeah.
So it says, by the time the Ragini soldier registered the blood-red flash of ice, it had already passed through his body. The sword was pure Matsuda, half Takayubi snow, half Mamoru's own blood. And it cut through the dragon killer like he was no more than air. He took the Takayubi snow, which is his dad, and then Mamoru's blood, which is his mom. So two different people with different ideals. Put them together. Perfect.
Yep.
And he created the Whispering Blade. So there's differences there, but he still recognized.
And he was still able to make just as strong of a blade by combining these different things.
Yeah.
It's like, just alchemizing.
Yeah, Mamoru was able to recognize the differences in each other, which is so important. But also is like, we all come from this, he said, the same moon, right? The same ocean.
Because at the beginning of the story, it gives this lore of, like, how they think everything kind of happened and people's powers. And it was interesting, too, because it was, like, they pointed out, like, it sounds so, like, weird because, like, how did they come from the ocean?
Yeah.
But it is this, like, the legends, the lore.
It's their god.
It's their god.
Next chapter is the worst chapter, I think, in the whole book. The shelter. Under the chapter heading, I said, or hell.
This chapter is so tragic because...
I know. Well, she has fought for her children, and she's about to die. And Setsuko, she's being choked out, basically. Setsuko comes up and tries to help her, but she gets knocked out.
Yep.
And so her 5-year-old son picks up her sword and kills an enemy. A 5-year-old boy. That whole scene is... honestly kind of cool, her fighting.
I know. But
like,
also...
her fighting style, like, she's so cool. But she is using her purpose of fighting for her family the same as Mamoru's.
And also this 5-year-old who, like, all he wanted to do was fight. Like, he's always at the dojo.
Yeah.
And, like, she's always picking him up because he's sleeping because he's so tired from, like, training all the time. And so it's interesting that Emma Wang gave him this moment. But also, like, he's 5. Like, these are kids.
It's another tragedy of war.
Yeah.
Like, people who shouldn't be killing people are doing it.
And just, like, kids can't just be kids. They had to grow up so fast. Like, Mamoru, he had to be, like, one of the men.
Yeah.
And he did. I would say, like, that part where Misaki's like, one day you'll be a man, but let me just be your mom for right now. And I think that moment, he really did become his own man, which I think is so...
He was also, 14 is incredibly young.
Yeah.
This is a 5-year-old, though.
I know.
A 5-year-old. A baby. 5-year-olds are what, like this tall?
I know. Kindergarten?
Yeah. And he's killed somebody. Like, that's horrible.
Traumatic.
So this next chapter for me is just so tragic and just really shows the repercussions of war.
Yes.
I think this is where Emma Wang slows down the story.
Yeah.
And is just now like, okay, this is what happens to people after war happens. So there's a lot that happens between Takeru and Misaki, and just for the sake of time, we're not going to go over that. But Misaki recognizes that Hiyori, her friend, is not there. And it's not in the shelter, and the planes are going to come and basically just demolish everything.
So and she also knows Mamoru's gone.
Yeah.
Like, so many people are missing.
so many people are missing, but Takeru's like, we just have to leave Mamoru, but Misaki's like, I'm going to save Hiyori. We're going to go get her and her son. Mm-hmm. So she shows up to her house, and it's horrible. She first sees little Hiyori's son is dead, and Hiyori is being raped. So she goes up and she just like kills this guy right away, and basically saves Hiyori, takes him back to the shelter. But for me, I kind of wish Emma Wang took a little bit more time on this. She does, and it's a heavy topic, so I could see maybe like why she wouldn't want to, because this is, I mean, killing someone's horrible, but I think taking away like the most innocent part of somebody, like Hiyori, who is like one of the worst things a human being could do to another human being. Yeah. Like taking away their control, their choice, autonomy, just gone.
To take something.
And for Hiyori, like this destroyed her as a person. This was her fault.
She like somehow, it was her fault. She was unworthy of her dead husband, her son, who she lost.
And also repercussion of that is Hiyori gets pregnant
with the enemy's child.
And Misaki being amazing is just like, no, it's fine. Like, it wasn't your fault. But to Hiyori, it didn't matter. Yeah. Her life was ruined. She lost, like, her whole self is gone. It doesn't matter
what anybody says.
And it was, I love Emma Wang's writing. Yeah. But I thought it was so chilling when it was like, anytime Misaki looked into Hiyori's big eyes, you could just see pain. So it was hard to look at. And that's what war can just do to people, to innocent people. And eventually when she does have her child, it's confirmed that it's not her son's, and she's so grieved that she does killing herself. Which is so horrible and tragic. And should not happen.
Hiyori is definitely one of the more tragic characters in the story. As like 100%. showing like some of the worst things that happen in war. Because like while Mamoru is able to look at this respectful fighter and find humanity in him, you also have like absolute monsters on both sides who like, and me and Callie were talking about this, where you like people in order to stay sane, you have to dehumanize people to justify your actions to them. And so clearly like this horrible guy just saw Hiyori as an object, as the enemy, saw her as less, and said that he could take whatever he wanted. Yeah. Including, like, the lives of her family, and just so
I feel like that's also why you can't be naive about war. Like, fighting has to happen, because stuff like this can't happen. There are just evil people out there who do believe that they are better than others, and that they can just do this.
And they can just take whatever they want. And so there's this moment, and I don't know where we want to move forward from here. Do we want to go to the fight, or do we want to talk about Mamoru?
I want to talk about Mamoru. The later half of this book is mostly now just the repercussions of war. What happens. There's a lot of politics that happen. I don't think we need to entirely get into that. I want to talk about just 3 more moments. The first one being when Misaki goes and finds Mamoru's body. I'm looking at page 387.
Oh, oops, I'm a little ahead. Okay.
And she is basically, she's found her son, and she recognizes, because she's a fighter, she understands what happens, and she just wants him back. She's like, I'm so sorry. I spent my whole life so worried about the past that I didn't see your life. And you loved us so much that you stayed here and you fought. I love this, you are my story, and I was so selfish, so tied to that shadow that I missed it. But she basically goes and is like,
so good, that's so good.
The thing is, she says later, the thing is, you're more important than all of them. So what I couldn't do for my parents, or Robin, or Takeru, or my unborn babies, I'll do for you, my son. I'll do for you. You've done more in this world than anyone could have asked. This once, let me be the mother I should have been from the beginning. Let me take care of the rest, all right? The best Misaki could do was hold her baby and love him, and hope it was enough that she could let him go. Other thing that I find very interesting is she does look at the corpse that killed her son, And it was easy to forgive a young man following orders. She also forgives the person that killed her own son. Yeah. But I think that's just like a perfect goodbye to Mamoru. And they do struggle with his spirit later on. And again, we don't need to go into that, but...
I will just mention briefly, though, I was very frustrated in the story when they wouldn't have a proper burial for Mamoru.
Oh, yeah.
And Takeru was even all for the Empire just doing mass graves and burning bodies.
I wouldn't say he was for it, but he wasn't going to stand up.
You could tell he was hesitant, but yeah, he was... Is it complacent? I don't know if that's the word, but I just needed to say that because that made me livid in the book when I was reading that part.
I know. Well, Takeru you're so mad at him this whole time because he was the one who let Mamoru stay back and fight.
Yep.
We don't know what would have happened if Takeru did make Mamoru go with him, but that's his son. He should have said, "No, son, you're 14, you're coming with me.
Yeah.
We're going to go find your mom. We're going to be a family." But he didn't.
Yeah.
He let him stay back. And Takeru then, who's the leader now of this whole village, allowed the mass graves, allowed the government to basically come and erase everything that happened.
Nothing happened, and then they're just going to say, they won.
Yeah.
No one died, no casualties.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so heart-wrenching. Just and Misaki says this, she's like, Mamoru, there's nothing to regret. I think, if anything, this world is filled with regret for how we treated you.
Yeah.
And...
So there's just a lot of tension going on. Misaki's raging.
Yeah.
Understandably. I was so mad. And Takeru he just doesn't understand.
No. And you don't know why. The whole time you're like, how can he do this? You're like, what is he, you're just so confused by Takeru and, why he does the things he does, because he just seems like stone. You just can't understand why he's doing anything. And you're just like, how can... he seems like a shell of a human to you, because he just doesn't seem like he has emotions.
Yeah. And we're going to now just skip all the way to page 495 to the fight. So Misaki being Misaki, she knows the only way to get through to Takeru is to fight. And to challenge him. And challenge his manhood. His manliness. Is he man enough to stand up to his wife and fight her? And
that's another thing. He's so prideful.
Right. And is he going to be courageous enough to then protect his family? Because he failed at that.
Yeah.
And Misaki's not going to stand for it.
And Misaki's like, do better.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do better.
You need to do better. So this is probably my favorite part of the whole book.
Oh, it's so good.
And you also find out that Takeru has been... his father was abusive physically.
Yep.
And so to cope with that, he would just become the mountain. And put all of his emotions in the mountain.
He just
that's why he was cold
all the time, in the mountains, and just releases into the mountains.
He doesn't have to sit. He could be walking around.
It is different, but I just think of someone who just cannot process.
No.
And so he just gives it to the mountain.
Mm-hmm. Well, he watched his his mother, who's like Misaki, had a great background, super, so powerful, and got married to her father and was just destroyed.
Yeah.
They fought all the time. His father beat his mother. She had tons of miscarriages, which Misaki didn't know, because Misaki also had miscarriages. And then Takeru's birth eventually killed his mom. And he did not want that to happen to Misaki. So instead of being a loving husband, he distanced himself. He's
he was never abusive to her, but he's never really
not physically.
Companion.
Yeah, no.
And they were psychological abuse for sure. But
so my favorite part is on 494 when they're fighting, and she has this type of sword that's even stronger than steel. So she's like, you're going to make a whispering blade that's so perfect it can cut my sword. That's even harder than steel, and that's going to prove to me. So they're fighting each other, and she has basically become a god herself. She's beating Takeru.
Yeah.
And he's the best fighter ever.
And it says Takeru buckled or something like that, and he was like, what?
And so she's like, show me better. She will, Takeru, as she pressed forward, show me the impossible.
Yeah.
She needs him to become something impossible. And then the one time we get Takeru's point of view, he's looking at her like, Who the heck is this?
I know. Like, he's never really looked at his wife in the 15 years of marriage they've had.
She says, he made and hopeless, he faced the creature he had awakened, this woman of God's blood and fury. And I love the imagery of he's just seen her as this doll that he doesn't want to break. Yet in this moment, he has broken her.
And he was just saying,
she's become something powerful.
Exactly. And he also like says like how much agony he can see her having, and then with every step of her movement, she's even angrier. And he was like, it was my fault.
Yep.
Like he even was like, I never meant for this to happen. But it's still, like, you still hate Takeru. You're the worst.
I know. Well, he does say, like, in this moment of awe, Takeru realized how much he owed this woman who had borne his children and fought and fought and fought for a family she never asked for. Mamoru hadn't inherited his strength from his father. It had come from her. But I just love how he even recognizes, like, Mamoru got everything from Misaki.
Nothing from him. And that's, he was, like, he could see his dad. He could see his mom, and he could see Mamoru and Misaki. And he was like, I need to stop this. And he was like, but if I do it, she's going to take my arm off. He's like, I'm trying to grab her, but like, her obsidian blade is going to take me out. So he's like trying to figure out how to diffuse the situation, because he like is coming face to face to exactly what he did to her, and like knowing like.
Well, what I find interesting about this moment too is she was just like, you need to break my sword, but she's using the sheath of it. She's not actually using the sword at the beginning, and he does break it. He does the impossible, but she keeps fighting. She's like, now prove to me that you're going to do it again, and you're going to keep fighting. And instead of going at her again, what does he do?
I can't remember.
He kneels down.
Oh, that's right.
He kneels down, and she's about to cut his head off.
So she could kill him.
And she's like, what the heck are you doing? And she stops him. But he's like, I accept your challenge. I will become the man you need me to be.
Yeah, that's so good.
And, I get chills. At the very end, he says, for his whole life, Takeru had been certain he was right to cast his pain off in the mountain. That it was only, that was the only way. Because how could one possibly hold so much suffering in something as small as a human form? Yet here was this woman who held everything inside a little body of flesh and blood without breaking. It was as though all the pain had compressed in her small figure, like the molecules of a whispering blade or 1,000-fold steel beaten to a blade in the forge. She had taken every drop of hardship like a stroke of the hammer, turning it to strength, and she was stronger than Takeru. She was breaking him. And then he makes the strongest whispering blade ever because he gets it. Because of her.
It's so good. But it's like this interesting thing, because it's like, I don't know, like Mamoru loves his parents so much. And then in this moment, like, he's probably, I don't know, like, I think like if Mamoru was so like still alive, like what he would think if he saw this, because in his mind, like, his parents together makes it whole. And so I feel like this is the first moment where you see their relationship be whole in a way it hasn't been before. But it had to be at its, like, it had to break apart. It had to be, like, shattered to be able to get there. Like, everything had to get worse before it could get better. And it was just...
They had to fight each other.
And, because, like, he would not see her otherwise. And then, like, it was so much stronger because he was able to see Misaki as an equal. And like, know that there's things that he could learn from her. It's just so good.
And there's a lot of stuff I feel like that happens after this that alludes to further books that are going to happen. So since it doesn't happen, I kind of want to skip just to the end.
Because it's not important for us to talk about
it's not important right now, and it's interesting to read about. And there are little things that happen in there that are very important, like them rebuilding, and Takeru actually stands up, and he's a leader. He's going to be a leader, and he's going to prove that he can do this, but he's going to need Misaki's help. But at the very end, I think a year had gone by, and they have rebuilt a little bit. And Robin, her love, is invited to come see her. And I find that very interesting that Takeru set that up. Like, he now sees her and recognizes that she still has some stuff in the past she needs to let go of. And through all of that, I love this part at the end. There's two quotes. One of them's on 581. It says, she held Robin's gaze unflinching, but if I learned one thing from the Firebird, is that a person's tragedy doesn't define them or conceal all the good that happened in their life.
Yeah.
There's been so much tragedy and so many horrible things. And then on 589, she says, wholeness she had learned was not the absence of pain, but the ability to hold it. War is horrible. Humanity can be horrible.
Yep. Because they're not being human.
They're not being human. And they're seeing people as less than human, so they think it's okay to do this. We've lost Hiyori. We've lost Mamoru.
Takashi.
Innocence. Hope. Takashi, who's just supposed to be, like, fun-loving and funny.
Like, Takashi was such an important part. He was, because, like, Setsuko is an important character, and Takashi, because they bring laughter into the home. Like, I think Misaki's like, I haven't laughed for, like, 9 years.
Yeah, because she had so many miscarriages, and she basically blamed herself for it.
Because the grandfather would blame her. Just like he did with his wife.
And Setsuko came and was like, I'm going to pick you up, dust you off. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
It happens.
So, like, there's just so much loss. There's so much grief in this book. And it's just, so anyways, we love this book. And it just grapples with so many complicated things at the same time. Like, family feuds, but also being stuck in the past. And also, like, childhood, and then war, and then loss, and then grief. And it's just, it's not like it's all better in the end, but it's just Misaki realizing what it means to be whole. And how, like, it's not that war is necessary, but I guess, like, you can make arguments when it is necessary, but it's not necessary to be whole, but she's able to be whole in spite of all the horrible things that happen.
Yeah, because her pains are valid. Everything she felt, all the loss she felt, she should feel those. She should recognize those, but that doesn't deter away from all of the good moments in life.
Yeah.
There's another quote in here that I love that I don't need to turn to right now, but it basically, Misaki's talking about how life is made up of moments and how we have to cherish the good moments in life because that's what makes up why we should live and why we should keep going.
Yeah. It's so good.
And then those bad moments.
Yeah.
You have to grapple with those, and it's hard.
Yeah, it is so hard, but it's just, like, part of living. And I think, and, like, especially in this book, you, like, question, like, why do such horrible things happen to good people? And it's just, like, I think it's just comes down to, like, that's part of life. Like, part of life is suffering and pain. Otherwise, you wouldn't know, like, being whole. Like, she was saying, like, she's like, you can't be whole without having an absence of pain.
Yeah.
And it's so, like, I love that idea and that notion. So, like, I don't know, like, it's so good. It's just, I love it so much. And at the end, you're just kind of broken. And you have to have a few recovery days. But I think it's just because, I don't know, it's just so... I don't think we could recommend this book enough.
No. And I don't even think we scratched the surface of everything in there.
No!
We didn't talk about miscarriages. We didn't even really go into Takeru as a character.
No.
And, like, abuse. We didn't even really talk about, like, relationships. All the relationships that are in there. There's so many things that we didn't talk about.
Wang kind of, we only talked about at the beginning.
I know, but he has, like, a huge role.
Yes.
And, like, there's so much politics we didn't talk about.
Yes.
And
there's just, like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if you've ever read, like, war stories, like, I feel like she does a good job of capturing the frustrations and the unfairness of it all.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think the whole thing, too, is, like, life kind of just sucks, but companionship, human connection is so vital to, like, living. And so, I don't know. It's so good.
I love it. I hope this wasn't too rambly.
And if it was,
well,
you know what?
I had fun talking about it.
And, like, I feel like this is kind of how it would be if we had more people here to converse about, like, how we felt about the book. And
this is how our brains work.
Yeah. And I felt like we just needed to keep it real with this book instead of having, like, some more structure because there's just too much, obviously, but we just talked about the things that we felt were, I don't know, something that caught our attentions as readers and what we felt was very important as takeaways.
Which I think is so beautiful. In 600 pages, which some people might find that as a long book, normally stuff like this takes multiple books.
And it's
like
a fast read.
Thousands of pages.
Once you get past the 100 pages, it's like you fly through this
like
story.
she just packs all of this into this one book. and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's weaved well, I think, and it's just masterful storytelling. And an annual read now. Yeah. So
it's also a little fun to read because, again, this was independently published. There are quite a few mistakes.
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed that. There were a couple typos where I'm like, that's
Oops, Daisy, I know, I've done that too. But also, even published books,
that's true.
I'm like, ooh, how did I get this? But anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us. And we just want to know what you guys think because, I don't know, this book is just, there's something different about it. And it's just really good.
Yeah. Well, our next one for December, we're getting into Christmas.
Charles Dickens.
A Christmas Carol. Yeah. I'm so excited.
We are super excited for the Christmas Carol.
Major shift. Just a short story.
Yeah, a short story, but a classic. And I've never read it before. Really? So I've never read it before. I always watched the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Well, there you go.
But it's interesting. We can talk about adaptations and all of that. It's very cool. But I've never read it before. And so for all of you that would be reading this with us, it's a nice little Christmas read. It's short. It'll be fun to talk about for someone who's experienced it versus someone who's never really known the story beyond what I've seen in media. So that's our book, and we're super excited to kind of close out this year.
Thanks for listening, watching. You're the best. Bye.
Bye.